Why is all the news happen at the same time, bro? Like, I want to post every few days, but like for some odd reason, all the great news are happening in the same time. And maybe that's why the UFC is doing this. You know, I just recorded a video and I talked about the great fight card that is UFC 291, Dustin Poirier versus Justin Gaethje, a great pay-per-view card. Dana White and the UFC just announced that today. But just earlier, I think it was this morning, the PFL announced that they are signing Francis Ngannou. Finally, it's been a long time. What I was saying is that I believe Dana White is like, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm just reaching the hell out of this. But imagine Dana White was like, oh, all right. Ngannou is trying to like make some headlines. I'm gonna get some bigger headlines and like throw him to the side and shit. Like, hear this out. Hear this 291 fight card and don't think about Ngannou anymore. But I have to talk about Francis Ngannou. I believe he's like one of the baddest dudes in the world, if not the baddest dudes in the world, obviously. I think it's difficult to say, right? We can't say it until Jon Jones and Ngannou fight each other, and it probably won't happen. So that's the sad thing about all of this. But it was a whole dramatic situation for Ngannou, you know, leaving the UFC and all that money on the table. But it's also about his own priorities, right? If we're not in his shoes, we don't really know what's important to him. So that's why I didn't want to comment too much about it, because we don't really know what he wanted. We don't really know what's his own priority as a fighter and what he wants to prioritize for his own benefits. And I saw a lot of people talking about, you know, the whole situation and being like, oh, he left so much money, he fumbled the bag, and like he could have made so much more money. And while I do believe he probably would have been bigger, more, you know, better reputation and stuff like that, maybe he didn't care as much about the money as you guys thought he did. And maybe with this deal that we saw he just signed, it seemed like it's not about the money as much as we believe it was. Like, I guess the money is important, but he also wanted, like, you know, a whole fighter union, the whole Africa, PFL in Africa, which is great. So to be able to fight in your home country, home soil, that's also great. So his whole priorities, he never really verbalize them clearly so we can understand, like, what do you want? Like, there was a lot of interviews of him where he talked about it, and you never really understood what he wanted, I believe. So I guess that's the discussion he had behind the scene, and that's why I just wanted to make that clear, that I think people went fast with the whole fumble the bag thing, because they're like, you know, he could have made much more money, he's gonna die in irrelevancy and stuff like that. But if he doesn't care about that, if he's like happy being a fighter, making a decent amount of money, but fighting in his home country and fighting and being able to have his freedom, that's also his thing. Like, maybe you're not fighting the biggest names in the world, maybe you're not fighting for the biggest paychecks in the world, maybe you're not fighting in front of the biggest crowds in the world, but if you're fighting knowing like, hey, if I do want to fight in a boxing fight tomorrow, I can. There's nobody holding me back from doing it. Maybe you live a more fulfilling and happy life. So, like I said, it's all about the priorities that someone has. That's why it was difficult to comment on it, and I believe people were commenting from a position where they were putting their own priorities. Like, if they were in Francis' shoes, that's what they would want for themselves, or even not for themselves, but more so as a fan. You're like, oh, I really want to see Ngannou fight Jon Jones. So like he's stupid for doing it, because myself, I would have want that. So it's a difficult situation. I'm not going to lie. Obviously, the biggest fight there is right now is him and Jon Jones, without a shadow of doubt. I think it's even bigger than the Wilder, Joshua, and Tyson Fury fight by far. You know, those boxing fights are great, but they're fabricated. They're plastic made, because Ngannou never boxed. He never showed a tremendous boxing skills, even in his MMA fights. He's not a very technical boxer. He just possesses incredible power. So I think those fights would like make numbers, just obviously because of the name he has and the power in his hands. But would they actually make sense? Not really. That Jon Jones fights, though, that is and would probably be the biggest UFC fight in UFC history. But at this point, I don't know if they ever put it together, which is very sad, to be honest. Like, we have to rest in peace to that possible matchup. It's a big what if in UFC history. I guess it's going to be one of those storylines to like discuss in the barbershop and stuff, like who would have won between those two. There's arguments on both, but I believe it's never going to happen. I heard John Jones talk about it, like it's a possible fight for him after the Stipe fight, but like I don't know if they're being optimistic that Ngannou was going to sign, or I don't know how the fuck they're going to do it. But Dana White ain't going to do a cross promotion with PFL, and Ngannou is definitely not signing with UFC, especially as of now. So ain't nothing happening right now, to be honest. And obviously Ngannou is getting old as well. John Jones also, but even Ngannou, I think he's going to fight next year in the PFL, and he's going to be like 37. So, yeah, we might have lost some prime years of Ngannou's career. But if it's for the better of the future of the fighters and the future of the sport in general, man, we might not understand the power of this decision he made right now. But maybe in the future we'll be like, oh, wow, this was a life-changing decision that he made. Like, to put some more power on the fighter's shoulders and like negotiate for yourself to the extreme and like take risk as a fighter to be able to make your own money and stuff like that. Maybe at the end that will be one of the best decisions he's ever made, not only for himself but for the sport. We rarely understand when a decision is great until afterwards. Like, and I'm not saying like months after, but I'm saying like usually years. It takes years to make these big changes happen in a global sport like MMA is becoming now. So yeah, what I'm saying is we'll see with time if that decision was made sense. But at least for now, I'm sure he's more happy. And what he wanted was freedom, and that's what he got. I think that's the most important thing, right? He left the UFC, and he always talked about it like, yeah, I'm fighting for 500, 600K, but that's not the main issue. Like, I could fight for 500, 600K if at least I had my freedom. I could put my own sponsors. I could box whenever I wanted to box. I could say the things I want to say. And I think that was his main issue, the fact that he didn't have that freedom with the UFC, and now he has it. Now he's able to speak his mind. He's able to do what he wants to do as a man, and I think it's liberating.
You guys know how the UFC contract can be restrictive, and as an independent contractor, you don't really have a say in that contract.
And I kind of like, I understand it. Like, obviously it's a dream to fight in the UFC, but when you fight on it for a while, you've been in it for a while, I think I would understand his frustration and being like, look, I'm my own fighter, I'm my own man. I want to put the sponsors I want to put on my shorts. I want to say what I want to say. I want to fight the guys I want to fight. It's like I understand that frustration from him, and at least for now, it seems like he's resolved that problem.